Minister, 5,000 licences. The reason being is that those people have moved on. I know several people that have now in green grass where they were going to sow forestry because they were waiting 3 years. That's to tell you in case you didn't know. Minister, in the line of afforestation, which would you call the worst year, 2020 or 2021?
Pardon? In
the afforestation licences, yeah. Which would you class as the worst year?
In terms of issued or planted?
Issued.
2020, was it? Yeah, 2020.
And it's a funny thing to say if we think we've made progress. I was just doing the figures up, that we have 32 hectares more in the first 3 months this year than we had in 2020, the worst year ever. Or actually, if you add 2021, we are down about 200 odd hectares in licences given out. Do you think that's progress?
I don't think anyone is denying that we're
no, but you've said earlier on in your statement
I think there has been progress made, yes.
Where is that in progress if we're down?
Progress in terms of what our projections are, progress in terms of how we've moved resources, and we'll be moving more resources into afforestation. I mean, we can look at blunt figures, you know, and picking one quarter against another quarter. I just think we have to look in a bigger picture. We have to look at our projections for the year or for the year. I mean, maybe in future we need to break it down month by month or week by week.
How many parts of the McKinnon report are fully implemented? I don't want to hear parts that are being talked about or whatever within different committees. How many parts are fully implemented? Straight question.
I understand about 3 or 4.
3 out of how many?
I think there's 21, is there? Yeah.
Do you think that's progress?
Well, I think it's movement, and to be honest, many, and if you've read, I'm sure you have read the McKinnon report. Many of those are not just click your fingers and it's done. Processes have to be put in place to enable any implementation of many of those elements. And there's a lot of comparison with the Scottish model, and while there are some similarities, there are some stark differences between Ireland and Scotland. Stark differences, and it is a bit unfair for people to keep saying they did it in Scotland in a year and a half and we're not doing anything here.
In relation to the targets that we're going to meet, under the new legislation, and I think the committee helped it in every way here, that new legislation, spruce isn't included in that, is that correct?
Yeah, and it's for native
planting. So it won't be in 20 years' time when our numbers are down for what we need for sawmills, what farmers will be sowing now, and there will be a take-up in that, because if you don't need the licence and it covers an area, it'll actually probably cover you in the eco scheme. Till tick-year box is the stunt that's going on. Well, hold on. Will it help the sawmills, yes or no?
It's native planting. Yeah, perhaps in 40, 50, 60 years' time we will have a hardwood.
It's the only way that you can get to what you're attaining to do in 8,000 hectares.
No. I mean, if you look at you'll have.
Well, why don't you leave it out?
Sorry, Deputy. You just recently heard from the Save groups just before I came in here. You see you surely have to absorb some of their concerns about the areas that they live in, which have been overrun by spruce plantations. I mean, and we cannot ignore that. This is the position we're at this moment in time. That we've
my understanding was, Minister, my understanding was that you were going to run, say, what was for commercial or what was for basically sawmills separate, that it wasn't going to be included in the 7,000 hectares, that was going to be a separate, what we get weekly for the forestry dashboard. My understanding that was it.
I don't know where the understanding is. The overall plantation rate is whatever trees. We don't say we're just planting 8,000 hectares of commercial forestry or spruce.
Mr. Collins, how many colleges are dealing directly with afforestation?
Currently, yes. Currently, there is 20 full-time equivalent, 22.
Dealing with deforestation?
Yeah, so we've actually moved resources, ecological resources, to focus on afforestation even more. So we have a cohort of in-house ecologists who are working on it, and then we have 2 sets of external consultants who are also working very closely with us.
So there's 20 ecologists?
Yeah, a massive cohort of ecological resources.
And can you just educate me on something? Is it that they're doing a half of an application a week when it's down at 10 or 12?
Well, yeah.
Good morning.
Deputy, and thanks for the query. Yeah, so it comes to some of what was alluded this morning in terms of the output for afforestation. So there was nine ecologists working up until very recently. I just started back in November into this role, and we put out a tender for additional ecologists, and they all came in 2 weeks ago.
So is it 20 now or 9?
So as of today, it's 22 ecologists are now starting to work on ecology files on the ecology work of afforestation.
Right.
So they came in 2 weeks ago. They're in the week of training. They're getting files now this week, so you'll start to see those washed through.
And can I ask you one question? Sorry for interrupting you. If there was 9 and I'd be watching the forestry dashboard weekly, which is very helpful. Is it that they do 1 a week each in ecologist? If I look at the figures, there could be 9, there could be 13, there could be whatever. Is that the output?
But of course, it's tied in with not just that. They have a bank of files that they're working through. So that's the output for approved files. But on an ongoing basis, as you know, there's 800 files for afforestation at the moment. 800, where's the figure there? 500 there. So in terms of that, so there's the further information request that they're having to go through, and they're coming through this. So that takes time. So that file is there, or else they have to go out to that site and do the investigation themselves and try and take that burden off the foresters themselves in terms of having to supply habitat maps or other additional ecology information.
Would you not class it as low output to be putting 1 file per person per week? Like if you look at a planner, and they have to deal with SACs, they have to deal with all the different legislation. I'd be watching the planners in Galway, and in fairness to them, they pump them out, and they have to go through all the different regulation and European legislation. Is there some sort of a blockage somewhere, or what's wrong?
Well, I suppose you alluded to the McKinnon report, and within that we've done the systems analysis, the process analysis, in order to, the Habitats Directive, as you know, is probably not so flexible in terms of how it can be applied. So we're in a particular situation.
Yeah, but can I come back to you on that? Can I come back to you on that? The Forestry Service in 2012 on their website, and Mr. Collins, you'll be aware of this, had that they were fully compliant with the Habitats Directive. The legislation on the Habitats Directive didn't change since, because I'd have watched it more than anyone. I know the blockages of it. It's the bane of our life, but a lot of people were so much for it. But why was it, and I know there was court cases, but if we're implementing it right in 2012, as was on the website, how is it it was different then?
Look, obviously it's the interpretation of the courts. There's how many high court cases. We have Brown Bear, we have Hellfire, we have Eco Advocacy working to that. So I think the Minister alluded to it earlier in terms of the regulatory review being carried out by Philip Lee and Associates, and I think someone alluded to earlier, but that was presented to the Forest Policy Group of Project Woodland last week, and in that the author is looking at the screening process, the time limits that were mentioned there earlier on, the scale differentiation, the single consent piece, that aspect around thinning as well in terms of how that can be dealt with separately. And so that's we're working through that at the moment, because I think there may be possibilities to help us streamline the process. It's to streamline the process.
I was contacted by farming organisations during the week in relation to this new document you're bringing out in a month's time. Basically, there's a draft done already that has been seen. Obviously, I didn't see it, so I'm not going to. But my understanding is, and I think the Minister has alluded to it there under the Habitats Directive and the different environmental regulations, that there ain't going to be much change in basically getting thinnings done on its own or getting a faster track system because of the blockage of environmental law. Would that be fair to say that we're back nearly to where the way you're doing it at the moment, that there isn't a simple solution in resolving this issue, that there's no new silver bullet coming, that you have to go through the same stuff that we're looking for the last year to try and change, that there isn't any new stuff that's going to magically get through this?
No, look, obviously that report has come from Philip Lee and Associates. They're going to, that'll be public information very shortly. She's finalising that report, and we'll send it to you straight away.
You'd have seen it, I presume.
Yeah, everyone, and so have the stakeholders as well. They've all seen it.
What's your view? Tell me.
Yeah,
with the draft, I'm not asking you the final document.
Yeah, there's certain possibilities there in terms of us allowing us to consider standard conditions that would allow us maybe to expedite the AA process or to screen out certain files as well. And that's it. What has us in the situation we are is that we're having to screen in 80% of the files. So there's two options. One is to try and screen out, and that's quite difficult in terms of what's coming back through the regulatory review. And the second is to
Can I put it back to you there? the senior inspector is the first place, and Mr. Collins, you'd be familiar with this, in getting an application. If an ecologist got to either screen in or screen out something at the beginning where an inspector isn't covered because they don't have the qualifications, then that speed up the process.
Well, we have it. I mean, the way it's set up is that we are, the district inspectors themselves do an initial screening exercise, and then that goes to the ecologist.
But can I ask you something? If I'm not qualified at something and I have to go into court, how can I be screening it?
Well, the thing is that the inspectors are provided with a lot of backup material in order to help them to make that screening decision. So, and also they would have been on site, so they're very much, in many cases, the best person to make that kind of call in terms of the information that they're given, and also their experience as professional foresters, which would always include an element of ecology and environmental appreciation and expertise. So, but it's backed up, and there's also ongoing contact with ecologists. There's training for DIs. There's this constant, and it's expanded further to training coming up for registered foresters, because we feel that the forestry professionals themselves can play a greater role in identifying habitats, for example.
Yeah, but just one thing, to call a spade a spade. If I bring you to court for making a decision, and you're not a qualified ecologist, and you made a decision on it, it won't stand up. Isn't that where we got that before?
Well, no, not necessarily, because, you know, it depends on what your individual expertise are in particular areas. So, and also the fact that the DIs are very closely backed up by ecologists, and that once the file is screened in, it goes through ecology, and you have a professional ecologist.
But to screen it out at the beginning,
that.
to speed it, you cannot do it.
Well, the screening out can be done by the DI because they're provided with very clear screening out scenarios for different species, for SPAs, for SACs. So it's very much within the ballpark for the DI to screen out.
Okay, because I want to let others in. On the Russ, I think it's 186 that is being processed. What's the delay on that? Out of 608?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy. Yeah, so there's currently 593 files on hand, which is a total of 2,402 hectares. 189 approvals have issued for that, for this totaling 620. So that leaves us still with just over 300 on hand. 160 are with ecology, and again, 2 weeks ago, I've allocated additional ecology resources to that to get through those as quick as we can. In addition to that, there's a number of files, as you know, which are tied up in the dual consent issue in terms of the planning permission piece, where we're moving from broadleaves to conifers, but we have very positive engagement with our colleagues over in housing, and have sent across draft suggestions for amending the SI to facilitate that, and we'll update you on that as soon as that comes back.
Okay, and the last thing I'm going to say, and this is an overall view, and Minister, I listened to what you said earlier about the problems in environmental law. I can tell you on the ground that, and it's a sad thing to have to say, that farmers that were interested in planting are gone away from it, and that's the reality, over a failure in that department for 7 or 8 years. And unfortunately, with what you've said there in listening to you, and you try and take the positive, but you stated about the environmental law and the different situations. I fear that, you know, when farmers will hear this, that it will be, they won't be opting for this. They will go for the acre or the whatever hectare that you're talking about. Yeah, they will, but that will solve a certain thing, and that's grand, and it'll tick a box for Ireland that we planted so much. It won't tick the box or the shortfall that will come in 2040 to 2045 for the sawmills that will actually lose or create loss of employment. And what I worry about, Minister, is that the same people are guiding the same department for the last 6 or 7 years while that's being looked at, and still, you know, this lacuna or this hole is going to happen in 2045 that the people of Ireland will suffer for, because then you know the trees obviously won't be there, and it's a sad thing to have to say, but that's my reflection on it. So I'll hand the next person.
Okay, next up is